It's probably a little bit noisier than the usual spot where I tend to record my vlogs, and that's also to do with the fact that one of my tires was flat the other day. I think I've talked about that, but I wondered if the parking spot that I normally go to, which has very ridged surfaces for you to drive over, may have caused that leak. So now I'm trying not to park there anymore, and so I've parked someplace else, which is a lot smoother, but there are more cars passing us, so perhaps the noise level will be up a little bit. I'm also going to try to keep it short because it is kind of hot in here. I'm in the car and the air conditioning of course is off because I'm currently not driving, so it's getting a little bit sweltering. I do like a good warm sauna type thing, but I also like to be able to breathe, so, and that's not really happening in here, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. Anyway, so I wanted to actually talk about cars and driving and my history with that. I think I've mentioned bits and pieces here and there, so I thought I would go like over the whole thing, and then also like how I got better at driving and what I've noticed so far. So first of all, when I was 18, my mother and my father both booked a driving instructor for me separately, because in the Netherlands you have to book lessons to drive, and they have to take like another, what is it, 20 to 30, maybe 40 lessons, I don't know, depending on how much time you need to prepare for the exam, and then you have your actual license if you pass that exam, of course. So they both booked me one on my 18th birthday, and that meant I have to choose because I couldn't go with both. Now, the guy that my dad hired I actually liked better, and it was also the guy that taught my brother how to drive. So I was like, okay, I've got this like connection with this guy already. He kind of knows our family through my brother and stuff like that. That would have been fun. He wasn't super like friendly, but he's more of a gruff type of person. Like, it wasn't unfair or unpleasant, just kind of didn't smile a whole lot, but just a decent kind of guy that I thought would be good to drive with. But my mom hired somebody who was impatient, and I didn't really like driving with him. Now there's of course somebody parking behind me because that's what you do. She got somebody who was fairly impatient, and I didn't really like him very much, but because I live with her and it is kind of like choosing between your parents in a situation like that, it's a little bit annoying, difficult to choose the one that you're not living with, because that would make the one that you are living with feel kind of resentful and stuff like that. So I chose the one that I was actually living with, so the guy was impatient. Now luckily after a couple lessons he did actually hand me off to a coworker of his who was a lot better, a lot more patient, but then the last lesson before my exam we switched back because there was a scheduling issue. So he switched back, like I got the impatient guy with the last lesson before my exam, which I thought was really annoying, and it really threw me off, and didn't make that exam. And then we tried, I think, 2 more times, maybe just once, I don't know, a couple times anyway. Then I went for my practical exam and I failed both, so that was great. And then I just decided not to drive for a while because I didn't have a great experience with driving. Anyway, so I was taking lessons with them, didn't really like him, failed my exams a couple times, and then I was like, okay, I don't really need to drive because I was working downtown, that I could definitely go there by bike every day, and that's what I was doing. So I just kind of went with that for the next couple of years. And then when I was working at this other place, where was I at that time? Initially I was still like doing internships for pharmacy assistants, but I switched to IT, and then I was working at a place downtown as well, and there I had to, well, you didn't have to drive, I just did tech support. And then one time or one day a project came around and they were like, oh, we need to give this project to somebody. And so my boss calls him and me into the office and starts talking about his project, how much fun it was going to be. And then he very explicitly said, well, we're not going to give it to you because you don't have a driver's license. And then he just kind of went on about the project and stuff like that to this other guy, and I was just kind of sitting there. So I was like, okay, well, fine, whatever. You guys apparently think that I'm like, there's something wrong with me because I don't have a license or whatever. I'll show you. I'm going to get my license, but not because I wanted the project, because at that point they could stick it where the sun don't shine. I didn't really want it anymore, but I just wanted to prove that the reason why I didn't have a driver's license was purely because I didn't want to and not because I couldn't. So during that summer holiday that I had 3 weeks off, and 2 of those weeks I spent going to this we have this organization here that kind of does like the road service stuff, but they can also train you to drive. They also have a driving school. So I went there and I took the driving school that also had you coming to their office every day for 2 weeks, and then in the morning you would do theory, and you would also do a virtual driving lessons. They had like half a car sitting inside of a dark room with a couple of huge projector screens in front of it, and it was also in the middle of summer back then, so things were overheating, and that happened at least once that I was driving down a road and suddenly like my rear view mirror was an error message because things were getting too hot under the hood, which is where the computer was. Kind of funny, but it's like a virtual driving thing, and that went fairly well. And then in the afternoon I would do actual practical driving with another student, because we had a situation where I had an instructor, and then we had an instructor that was learning to become an instructor. He was almost done with his stuff, and so he was now, I guess, going through some type of internship by taking on a student, and that was the fellow student that also drove with us. So there was always 4 of us in the car, and it was good weather, and it was a reasonably good vibe in the car, so we just kind of did our thing, drove around. It was a lot better than my previous driving experience. And so at the end of that, we got 1 mock exam, which went for perfectly fine, and then we got the actual exam. And since I was a lot more prepared for it this time and actually wanted to get it, I actually passed. I did make one weird mistake though. I think that's more of a blackout thing. Like they just like have you drive around a bit for a while, then after a while they say, oh, take a right here, go left there, stuff like that. And at the first time that he said take a right, I just completely forgot everything, and I didn't even know how to use the turn signal, and just kind of everything got blocked. There's a guy walking really slowly here. It's gonna take 3 hours to get past the car at this rate. So I might have to go somewhere else. Okay, and now we're home. So, that was a little bit annoying. There was a guy there who was walking like in tiny little paces, just slowly moving forward. And I thought, well, I don't know where he's going, but he's not in a hurry. And he was still like way off. So I figured the longer I waited, the closer he would get. And that would mean I would have to sit there at least for another 5 minutes pretending not to be recording a video, because I hate when people see me talking to a camera or a phone. Because people have all sorts of weird ideas about that, or they might start trying to stare at you to see what's happening, and I just really can't stand that. So I decided to leave, and now I'm here, which is unfortunate because I wanted to talk about cars and driving in the car, but we're just not going to do that right now. Because of course also with the car standing still and the engine off, there was no air conditioning, and so it was very, very sweltering in there, so we weren't going to last too long in there anyway. But okay, I think I was at the point where I had just had 2 weeks of driving lessons at the road service place, A&WB, and then I went for my exam, and I froze during the exam when I had to take a right turn. Just didn't know what I had to do anymore. And so I was like a little bit nervous about that. But it did pass, fortunately, so after that I actually had a license, and then I was allowed to start driving for work, because they occasionally would need people to drop off some hardware at like other offices, or pick stuff up, fix printers, things like that. And since I did tech support, that would be me fairly often. I would go and do those things. I also drove like in a van for a while. That was kind of fun. Did that for a while, and then we had a merger with another company that did something very similar to ours. And they put everybody in similar departments from our company to their company, like merge everything together as well. So the same thing happened with the tech supports, and the tech supports there only really did stuff by phone. And there were occasional jobs to go and drop stuff off with people who work from home a lot and stuff like that, or pick stuff up and all that sort of thing. But those jobs would be reserved for people whom the boss liked, or would just like pick 1 or 2 people who would do that, and me and the rest were not part of that, so we never actually got to drive anywhere. So from that point on, I actually didn't drive anywhere because I didn't have a car. I lived right downtown. Everything I needed was within walking distance, so I didn't really need a car. On top of that, I couldn't really park a car there anyway because it was the town center, and they don't want cars there, generally speaking. They don't really have a lot of parking space for cars. It's either you have to pay in order to park there per day, or you have to pay per month, and they would have a spot that you're supposedly allowed to use. And a lot of people that come downtown just don't happen to know where you're not allowed to park and stuff like that, and that could be that somebody is in your spot and then you can't park it anywhere. Even though that person will probably get a fine for parking in a place where he's not supposed to, that doesn't help you. It only really helps the local government because they get the money and you get to go figure out where to park your car next that's not in the way. So that didn't really help, and so I didn't really think about buying another car until I actually moved here, which is in an area where I do have parking space around. It's not a lot of parking space. We're constantly fighting for spots here as well because everybody here has a car, at least one. Most households have two, and there just isn't enough space. This neighborhood was built in the early 80s, where the assumption was that each household would have one car, and even counting the amount of houses and apartments that are in the area, they didn't really have enough for even that. They kind of wanted to keep the amount of cars that were parked along the streets, I guess, low or something, because even if everybody had just one car, it would still be a struggle for most people to find a spot. And the amount of cars has only grown. So, but I wanted to have a car because I could at least attempt to park it near here, and so I went and got a Daewoo Matisse. I think I've talked about that as well. My first car I bought from this guy who was not really part of a garage or a company. He just had his own little company where he would flip cars, basically, fix them up a little bit and then sell them on. And when I went to have that car checked for the first time for its roadworthiness test, that one failed on a lot of small points, and so I had to have it declared economically totaled. And then I went and got the Blue Panda, which I think I've shown pictures of the Panda, in any case, Blue Panda, that I drove for a while. And so I had a car that was technically in better shape, but I was still a little bit afraid of driving because I haven't driven in about 10 years by that point. I had driven that blue Matisse, or teal I think it was, home from where that guy had it parked. But that wasn't a great success either. I wasn't used to driving anymore. Also, I kept stalling and stuff like that. And I thought, okay, this is definitely not the car's fault. Not really aware of what the car does. But it's probably because I haven't driven in such a long time. So I thought, this is going to be very dangerous. So I didn't actually drive it much myself either when I bought that. And when I got the Panda, I thought I need to start driving a little bit more, but I'm still very much afraid that I'm going to mess up because I haven't driven in such a long time. I had to get back on the horse, so to speak. So what I did was I drove to a nearby shopping center, which had a single lane road that went to and back. So I really only had to focus on operating the car because there was nobody beside me trying to pass or anything like that. There were occasionally people behind me trying to pass, but you know, it's a single lane road, so what are you gonna do? And so I just got a little bit more I wouldn't say adventurous, but a little more comfortable driving, just going back and forth once a week for groceries. But that one had the issue with the very weak pedal for gear shifts. Like, we have 3 pedals in a gear shift car. You have the one that does the shift. You have to push that in to change the gear shift itself. And it also needs to come back up so that the engine knows that it's time to move. And this one, it was almost up by the time that the engine would start to do something. Unless you had it in reverse. In reverse it went really fast. I don't know why it does that, but okay, fine. So that one had a bit of an issue. That meant that whenever I would be stuck in a traffic jam or slow traffic, I had a very high chance of stalling, so I was very nervous about that. I'm glad I only really got in one traffic jam with that car once, an actual traffic jam that lasted for 10 minutes on the highway, and because that was very tense. I had to constantly try to keep the engine going, otherwise it would stall and stuff like that. I don't think I stalled at that time, but it was very tense, so I'm not very happy with that. But I was able to drive it, and also during the whole pandemic lockdown thing, people at our office were like, if you have a car and you don't necessarily need to use trains, you can come to the office with your car. In other words, you're going to come to the office no matter what, unless you're really dependent on public transport. So I had to drive it back and forth. And I got a little bit more brave, I guess, doing that, because it's just the repetition. You get practice, you start driving, and then eventually you get used to it again. And so I found this other job that I'm currently at, and that was also roughly the time, the in-between time. I had one last week, I think, left to work at the one place, and we were working from home at that time, so I didn't actually drive much, I think. And then I had to have it checked as well for roadworthiness. It had been about a year since I had that car. And no, 2 years, because I did actually get it through one test. That was perfectly fine. And the reason why I didn't get it through this test is because I went and took it to a place where they're a little bit more strict, I guess you would say. I also asked them to change some tires, and I apparently got the wrong size of tires. I don't know how, because I used their selection thing on the website to say, oh, this is my car, this is the type. And then they showed me a couple different tires that I could put under it, and I chose one of them, but apparently that was the wrong one. I don't know. Anyway, so that was already a problem, and I needed to switch tires. That's why I wanted to do that, and that's why I went to that center. Otherwise, I would have just gone to the same place that I went before, where they probably don't even look at the VIN numbers. Like some certain places are a little bit more accurate than others, which is a good thing if they're accurate, but it can also be really annoying because in this case turned out that my VIN number was rusted and I didn't know that. I don't even to this day know where the VIN number is in that car. I don't know where the VIN number is on this car. Hope it's not rusted as well. But anyway, so they said, oh, we can't check the roadworthiness because we have to check the number first, and then we can do all the tests and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, well, where do I have to reprint it? Well, you have to go to this other place, the RDW is what they call it, and you have to go and make an appointment there, and they can reprint it, and then it can be checked, and then it'll be good to work on. But the appointment that I was able to make with that place, that other place, was after my roadworthiness warranty, I guess you would call it, would expire, and that means that within those 2 weeks that from the expiration point and the appointment that I made, I wouldn't be able to drive it because that would be illegal and I could get pulled over and fined and blah blah blah. But the battery that was in the car needed to have at least 10 minutes driving every week in order to stay alive, so to speak. I have had it replaced once, but you know, it's like this thing where if you don't drive a lot, your battery starts to go down really fast because the chemicals that are in that box basically start to unmix unless you keep it active. That's why you need to drive regularly often, or fairly often and regularly. Which is also one of the reasons why most post-apocalyptic movies are incorrect, because you can't keep driving a car. If you see a car that's been sitting there for a year, you can't just like start it and then go. The battery's bound to have an issue, and if not the battery, then the gas will have expired, because gas also has a shelf life. Who knew? Anyway, so that's The Walking Dead off the table. They probably all should be riding horses. But okay, so that was an issue with that car because the appointment was after the date expired, like I said, so I called them, that place, like, hey, this is the case, it's gonna expire at this date, and I couldn't book an appointment any earlier. Could I maybe book it before then, or can I, like, drive it over there? What do I do on that date? Drive it over there? They're like, no, you can't drive it after that date because that's illegal, and if you want to move it here, you're gonna have to call, like, a truck to like move it there and then move it back once it's over, the whole reprinting thing, and that was going to be on my cost. And then also on the date that I could have it tested next, which I would then not be able to plan beforehand, because wouldn't you know it that I would go there and they would reprint it, or there would be something else wrong with it, because probably they'll do more than just try to print stuff. And then I wouldn't be able to go to the next date for having it checked. So I didn't book a date yet, but I figured, like, if I do all that, like paying $90 to have it transported, $90 to have it transported back, and of course the expenses for having the number reprinted, it's going to sit there for ages, and then I won't be able to drive it until it's the actual date that I can have it checked again. And that would mean that at the very least the car would sit there and not drive for a good solid 3 weeks, probably a month. Unless I were to sit there and just rev the engine for 15 minutes every couple of days or something and have my neighbors wondering what the heck's wrong with me, why isn't she leaving, why is the car running but we're not seeing any action, that type of thing. So I was a little bit unhappy with that, and since I was about to start a new job, for which I definitely needed a car in order to get there, I was like, okay, I can't do this, I need to quickly get a new car. And that's how I went and got this current one, the Citroen C1 that I have right now, which up to date is perfectly fine. I've got the roadworthiness test and was checked, I think 2 weeks ago by now. So that went well at a garage that's actually from Citroen, so I would hope that they do things correctly. Anyway, so I've been driving now for a while, and ever since I got the Citroen as well, I've actually gotten a little bit better at it, because this one does not have that issue with the weak pedals, so I can actually drive like a normal person. So there's that. But now on to the part where I was like, okay, what have I learned since then? I got a little bit more confidence, and now that I'm actually in a car that can drive a lot better than the previous one, also just going out driving whenever I feel like it, which is a big difference. And now that I'm a little bit more up to the level of the average road user, I start to notice that what I used to think before, that people were actually pretty good drivers in general, that's not really true, because I looked around and a lot of people think they're good drivers, but they're actually not. They're just kind of used to their own style, and a lot of them tend to think that they're doing good. And if you're driving behind them for a while, you see them like veering off left and right, or like doing stuff with their phone somewhere, or talking to somebody, or just being weird. And I don't know. So I've seen some strange techniques being deployed. And of course, there's a lot of people who think they're fantastic and they're actually super annoying to everybody else. You know, the type that tends to weave back and forth between the different cars because they think they can, and then they think that it'll save them like 3 extra seconds to get to their place of destination. Those are actually very dangerous, and if you are the type of person that thinks they're super good at driving and they like to go slaloming between all different types of traffic, you're actually annoying everybody. And the reason why it works is because they can see you coming from a mile away and they know that you're an idiot, so they have to basically just keep going the straight line so you can get past them, and then they can do whatever it is that they need to do again. I just wanted to like make that little observation, like a lot of people think they're good drivers, but they're actually not. And I think that the general level of driving skill is a lot lower than the average person probably thinks. And if you're one of those people who's like me, who hasn't driven in a while and is a little bit obsessed with what will other people think of me driving in my car, probably they're just as bad as you are, but they make different types of mistakes. That's basically the whole thing that I wanted to say, so don't worry too much about it. Anyway, that's it for today. I think that turned into quite a long video, so I'm gonna call it now. I said it was gonna be brief, but that's when I was still in the hot car. Now that I'm in shade, of course, things are different. So I'll see you next time. Hope to see you on another stream. We'll be doing Stardew Valley on Tuesday, of course, and this Friday will be Minecraft, so I'll see you for that. And make sure to stay healthy and safe, and bye-bye for now.